People go missing every day. Most of the time, there is an explanation. Most of the time, eventually, there is an answer, tragic or mundane or both. But sometimes there isn't. Sometimes a person vanishes from a place they knew well, in circumstances that make no sense, with no trace left behind, and the answer never comes. The case sits open. The family waits. And the question of what happened to that person remains unanswered for months, years, decades. 3 stories tonight about people who disappeared in ways that have never been adequately explained. 3 cases that were investigated, searched, analyzed, and still have no answer. Some of these people were never found. Others came back. And for the ones who came back, what they remembered or didn't remember raised more questions than any disappearance. Some doors once opened don't close again. Since we were both 12 years old. 30-year friendship. I know him the way you know someone after 30 years. His habits, his sense of humor, his particular way of moving through the world. I know when he's off. 3 years ago, David disappeared. He was 41, recently divorced, living alone in a house about 2 miles from mine. We talked by phone every few days. When I didn't hear from him for 4 days, I drove to his house. His car was in the driveway. His phone was on the kitchen counter, his wallet, his keys, everything. All there. No sign of a struggle, no note. Just David, gone, from a locked house with everything he owned still inside. I called the police. A missing person report was filed. A search was conducted. 3 days after he disappeared, David walked out of a state forest about 15 miles from his house. He was found by a hiker at around 7 in the morning, sitting at the edge of a trail. He was physically unharmed. His clothes were clean. He was not hungry or thirsty. He had no memory of the 3 days, not fragments, nothing. His last memory was sitting on his couch watching television the evening before I noticed he was gone. His next memory was sitting at the edge of that trail with a hiker asking if he was okay. He was evaluated medically and psychiatrically. No medical explanation was found. He'd never had a seizure or any episode that might explain it. He didn't drink. He was in good health. David is still David. In most ways, he laughs at the same things. He has the same opinions. He cares about the same people. But there is something different, something small and hard to name. He's quieter now. He pauses before answering questions in a way he never used to. And sometimes, when he doesn't know I'm watching, he has an expression I've never seen on him before. Not sad, not afraid. Something more like listening, like he is paying attention to something the rest of us can't hear. He doesn't talk about the 3 days. He has nothing to say about them. But sometimes I wonder if the 3 days talk to him. My aunt worked for many years as a search and rescue volunteer in the Pacific Northwest. She has stories, many of them. But there is one she comes back to more than any other. One case from about 15 years ago that she says she thinks about every time she goes out on a search. A man in his mid-30s, experienced hiker, went out on a trail he'd done many times before. Clear day, well-marked trail. He was expected back by 4 p.m. When he didn't return, his family called it in by 6. Search and rescue was out by nightfall. The trail was searched end to end. The surrounding area was covered systematically over the next 4 days with dogs, helicopters, and a large volunteer team. Nothing. No sign of him anywhere on or near the trail. No items dropped. No indication he'd left the trail. No sign of injury or incident. He had simply ceased to be there. He was found 11 days later, sitting at a picnic table at a campground about 40 miles away. He was physically fine, alert. He recognized his family immediately when they arrived. He had no memory of the 11 days. None. And he had no idea how he had gotten to the campground. He had never been to that specific campground before and had no reason to go there. My aunt said the strangest part of the case, the part that has stayed with her, was his demeanor when he was found. He was not distressed. He was not confused. He was calm, peaceful even. When she asked how he felt, he said he felt rested, like he'd had the best sleep of his life. 11 days in the wilderness in early spring, no food or water, no shelter, and he felt rested. The case was eventually filed as a medical event of unknown origin. My aunt has never accepted that explanation. And every time she goes out on a search now, she says she thinks about what could take a person from a well-marked trail and return them 40 miles away, well-fed and rested, with 11 days simply removed from their memory. This story is about my grandmother's sister, a woman I'll call Frances, who disappeared from her home in rural Virginia in 1987. I grew up hearing the edges of this story. It was one of those family things that was referenced but never fully told, the way families protect themselves from the hardest parts of their own history. When I was in my 20s, my grandmother finally told me the full version. She said she was telling me because she wanted someone in the family to know the truth before she was gone. Frances was 34 in 1987. Married, no children, lived in a farmhouse about 20 miles from where my grandmother lived. They spoke by phone every week. One week, Frances didn't call. My grandmother drove out. The farmhouse was empty. Frances's husband was at work. Frances was gone. No note, nothing out of place. Frances's husband had been at work since 6 a.m. When he'd left, Frances was making coffee in the kitchen. By the time my grandmother arrived at noon, she was gone. There was one detail that my grandmother had never told anyone until she told me. When she came into the farmhouse to look for Frances, she walked down the main hallway. There were 4 doors off that hallway: kitchen, living room, bathroom, bedroom. All 4 doors were open, except one. The bedroom door was closed. My grandmother opened it. The bedroom was empty and undisturbed, but on the floor in the exact center of the room, arranged in a neat line, were 4 items: Frances's wedding ring, her house key, her watch, and a small photograph of my grandmother that Frances kept on her dresser. Frances was never found. The case is still technically open, though no one actively works it. My grandmother kept those 4 items until she died. I have them now. She told me she believed Frances had left them on purpose, that she had put them there deliberately before she left. What she could never answer, and what I cannot answer, is how you leave a room voluntarily, lay out the things that matter most to you, and then vanish so completely that 37 years of looking never found a trace. And why, if you left willingly, would you never come back?